Our topic today is about the Arabs and the Jewish conflict. This conflict had existed about 1,400 years now, ever since Islam was established. Probably it can go further than that, even unto the time of Abraham. This conflict has not been subjected to critical analysis, and so people only take it as a religious conflict. How far is it true that this is a religious conflict? When we look at the history of the Jews have suffered so much. It is time for the Jews to realize a relative peace, and as a result, an absolute peace. They need peace in the world as chosen children of God. But until now, they are still struggling with other people for peace. In their history, at some time, they were said to have been in Egypt as slaves. Although in Egypt we can analyze it critically, it was only Joseph that was taken as a slave to Egypt. By the time the family joined Joseph, Joseph was a free man and he was a governor. And as a result, the Pharaoh gave them the best land. So these pharaohs were good people. And when they lived there, they said over time, some of the succeeding pharaohs enslaved them. However, we can see that in Egypt, slaves could be free to become citizens, to the extent of even rising up on the social ladder. Egypt has good education, so Moses and others were educated. So that was good for them. Also in Egypt, for example, when Abraham went to Egypt and declared his wife as a sister, the Pharaoh had morals, so he asked the sister, "Who are you to Abraham?" And she said, "That's my husband." The Pharaoh didn't do anything and handed her over to Abraham. And that was good. A society of high morality. A society that takes care of other people. But no matter what, the Jews suffered under slavery for 400 years until they were released by Moses to go back home. So for 400 years, they were in slavery, and that was suffering. When they came back and established their kingdoms, then the Assyrians came to take them prisoners. The Assyrian captivity lasted for 110 years. From 722 BC to 612 BC, 110 years in captivity. The Jewish at this point need peace. Then another time, in 587, the Babylonians, who were considered to be their cousins, also came and took them prisoners. The Babylonian captivity came under King Nebuchadnezzar. So there was some kind of instability in the lives of the Jews. And after the Babylonian captivity, we could see that they came back home and settled. With the Babylonian captivity, the Jewish went under pain. Then somewhere in history, the Romans also took over the Jewish nation. They ransacked Jerusalem in 70 AD and 135 AD. And when they ransacked them, they lived among their brethren. So the Jewish have suffered so long. What happened later in Germany under the leadership of Adolf Hitler, the Nazis, the Jewish went into Holocaust. A very terrible situation. Their human beings were not considered as dignified people. They destroyed them and put some of them in gas chambers. This is the time for the Jewish people to have peace all over the world. Then later on today, we see that in the Middle East, they have problems with all the people around. The Jewish people need peace at this time. What is the cause of the division between the Jews and the Arabs? Some Christians preach anyhow without a critical analysis of the Jewish-Islamic conflict, the Jewish-Muslim conflict, Islam and Judaism. What is the difference? We will subject this to critical analysis within the school of conflict. Within the school of conflict, there are three determinants of social conflict. The first one, we can take it from Hegel. According to Hegel, it is the consciousness of man that determines all social conflict. So it could be a doctrinal differences between the Arabs and the Jews that have caused the conflict. The ideas of the Jews and the ideas of the Muslims do not correlate, and as a result leads into conflict from Hegel's perspective. And from Marx's perspective, conflict come about as a result of the being. So it is not the consciousness of man that determines the being, but the being determines the consciousness of man. So from Karl Marx's perspective, it is the material element that caused the conflict. So what are they fighting for? They're fighting for what? Material things? Then there is a third aspect of the determinant. According to Vinep Kankam-da-Costa, he said, if a conflict comes and leaves a permanent division, a permanent schism, that conflict might have been caused by sexual gratification and its differential models. So we will subject the Jewish and the Arab conflict into the school of conflict and see how this conflict has come about so that they can dialogue to bring peace among them. When we look at it, there have been a lot of approaches to ensure that the Jewish and the Arab conflict is resolved, most of the time by some Christian leaders. Is the approach correct? Sometimes it may not. So we got to know the real determinant so that these people can dialogue in such a way that there will be relative peace in that area, so that the Jews can have peace wherever they are, whether they are in present-day Israel or in any country in the world that they need peace. Looking at it from Hegel's perspective, is it really the ideas? Is it really the doctrine differences which is dividing the Jews? From the look at things, we can see that both groups believe in the common law of Moses. The Torah is the foundation of Judaism. In Islam, the Torah is a real revealed book of God that Islam was based on. If it is so, then there is no doctrinal differences between them. Because Moses wrote the first 5 books of the Old Testament, which is the Torah. And from then on, all the subsequent prophets wrote and put it in the Old Testament. So the Torah, according to Muhammad, is the foundation of the Islamic religion. So more or less religiously, they are in the same accord. The Jewish call God Yahweh, and the Arabs say Allah. Is there any difference between these two gods? If there are differences, we got a problem. Both are monotheistic. They worship one God. And both of them even reject Jesus' idea of being the Son of God. Muhammad has condemned that. Jesus was not the Son of God, but a miracle of God. And the Jews also have accepted, how can he be a son of God? And that's why probably they work all things to kill him. So they are in accord when it comes to ideas. When it comes to ideas, both of them practice polygamy. They accept the divorces, so there's no difference. The Jewish people believe that circumcision put them right before God. For the Arabs, while they accept circumcision, they also know Muhammad has come as the last one to put them before God, while the Jews still rely on Moses. So therefore, Muhammad came to build upon what Moses and even what Jesus had established. So that should be the continuation of the prophetic line. But that was not accepted as the prophetic line. So what actually caused the break? Religiously, they are not different from each other. They agree on many terms. Culturally, how they treat women, they are all the same. There's no difference in their treatment. Also, both groups have common laws. They have common laws. They believe in the same thing. So from the religious perspective, from doctrinal perspective, they are quite not different. So what is the real factor that divided the Arabs and the Jews that until today, Christians are playing games around them, and they cannot even try as much as possible to unite? Now let's look at it from economic point of view. Abraham is the father, and all his children. Is there anyone who envy any brother in terms of material acquisition? It is not. Even at the point when Christians always said, and Abraham gave all his things to Isaac, and to the children of his concubines, he gave gifts. Was Ishmael very envious? Or was he jealous about Isaac? That is not. There was no division between them. There was no enviness between the two. They lived harmoniously. No one really cared about who had what. And as a result, Isaac's son, Esau, married the daughter of Ishmael. If they were not at peace, how can that happen? So nobody really cared about who had what. So from economic point of view, there have been no enviness among the children of Abraham. And also, the other 6 children the younger ones, never envy anybody in terms of material acquisition. Even in terms of Esau and Jacob. When Jacob was coming from his journey to his uncle, he brought gifts to his brother to apologize. But guess what? Before even he could do that, his brother had shown him love by embracing him and forgiving whatever he had done to him. And he himself also thought deeply about what he did. And they forgave each other. Before even he told him about his gift, his brother said, I have enough. Keep that for yourself. That means those people were not interested in anybody's material things. So material things are not the point of the division. Even at the point when Jerusalem was ransacked, there were no airplanes, there were no ships, there were no trains, there were no cars. And what happened? They have to live among their brethren in the whole neighborhood. And they were at peace with each other. And until the coming of Muhammad, when he came and traced his ancestry to Abraham through Ishmael, then the division widened. So sometimes when we look at the conflict today, we will think they are fighting for material things, fighting for land. Is it true that they are really fighting for a land? The land relates to something. Whatever they are fighting for has a historical trend. They link it to Jacob. And what is the issue of Jacob into the conflict? And we have to analyze it from Abraham's point of view. The conflict today, from the Christian perspective, all those lands must be given to Jacob to connect him to Abraham. So what is it into Abraham? That is the fundamental point of the conflict. Many Christians, even sometimes, touch the real issue. If all lands must be given to Jacob as a grandson of Abraham, what are they talking about? And the Christians will say, and Abraham did not wait and had a wedlock child. That issue must be critically analyzed to see what the Christians are saying is the real fact. That all the lands in that area belongs to Jacob and his descendants. Taking for example, in the United States today, Europeans have been here for 400 years. They took the land from the Indians. Are we trying to say that the Indians will come back and say, you took our land, give it to us, and that will be accepted? That's not. But on the part of the Jews, having left the land for over 1,000 or 2,000 years, and coming back as a result of the British and their allies buying the land from the Palestinians for them to settle, that was a good thing. And then from there on, they are claiming many areas. All is because it belongs to Jacob. The story of Jacob issue into Abraham starts from this point of view. Abraham had it difficult or had a problem having children with his wife Sarai, who was also considered as a sister. Over many years they tried and had no child. So Abraham consulted God. He met God and he said, "Oh God, you have given me everything. That's good. But there is one thing. If I die, there's no one to succeed me. If it happens, then my nephew Eliezer in Damascus will succeed me." And God said, no, that's not going to happen. Somebody from your own body will succeed you. He didn't point out what woman will have the child for Abraham. And this is something that most Christians make mistakes. Does Abraham have any right to marry another woman? Or he has to stake himself to Sarai? If people are suggesting this morality to Abraham, they should also look into Jacob and his marriages and make comparisons. Or look into the life of David or Saul and make comparisons. So when God told Abraham he was a faithful servant, so he went home and broke the good news to the wife. And Sarai said, "Take my maid and marry her." But Abraham did not buy to the idea immediately. He was a faithful servant, so he has to try it once again with Sarai while he was preparing to marry Hagar. For 10 years, they tried. And at the time God met Abraham, he was 75 years. And now he was 85 years. There was no child. So Sarai took Hagar and gave to Abraham as wife. That is the most appropriate thing to be done in a polygamous society. Because in a polygamous society, the first wife has to agree to anybody who is coming into the marriage. And so by doing that, that is acceptable. Hagar also had all the qualities for Abraham. Beautiful. You know, Egyptian blacks, beautiful for Abraham. So Abraham really liked it. And he did marry Hagar. In a year's time, when Abraham was 86 years old, he had his first child, and he named the child Ishmael. This child lived with them for 13 years. There was no problem. He was considered as the only child of Abraham at that time. Then when he was 13 years, God appeared to Abraham again and said, "A year today, you're going to have a child with Sarai." And Abraham laughed at God because Abraham had good relationship with God. So he just laughed at God and said, "Oh my God, now that I'm old and my woman is also old." Why did he say that? He was enjoying himself with a younger woman. And as being said by most black people, he said, if you go black, you never go back. So that was good for Abraham. And even told God, "Oh, let Ishmael live." Abraham always prayed for people. He prayed for his nephew Lot in Sodom and Gomorrah. When God couldn't find 10 people righteous to spare the city, Abraham asked him, "Are you going to destroy the righteous?" And God said, "I will save the righteous." So at this point, Abraham also asked for Ishmael to live, which means he didn't need any child again. But God said, I will bless him. But the child you will have with Sarai is coming and it's possible. Abraham had to be obedient and go into Sarai. So God went to Sarai and told her the same news. Sarai also laughed at God. Now that I'm old, will I even have pleasure? And my man is also old. Did they actually know what they were talking about? They should see the life of Abraham in later times. So God said, it's going to happen. Abraham being so faithful, he went to Sarai, and at the age of 100, he had his second child. So Ishmael is 14 years older than Isaac, and they live. But the day that they were celebrating Isaac in the house, guess what happened? Women and jealousy is a fact. In marriage, women are always jealous. The jealousy emerged immediately Sarai had the child. So she has to find ways and means how to convince the husband to move the other woman out of the house. You just imagine, she said, the little boy, Ishmael, was mocking at her. So Abraham should move him and the mother out of the house. This really distressed Abraham. How should that happen? This is a woman from Egypt. And how will I allow her to go? And she is my wife, my second wife. Should I let her go? And in oral tradition, things can be written. So it was written that God came in to tell Abraham to let a woman go. And the most religious people preach this without critically thinking. We call Abraham the father of nations. And at the same time, we said Abraham threw her out. Does it mean that Abraham pushed her like a dog or like a chicken? Throwing the second wife and his first son to be homeless? That's what people always preach. They were homeless, so they move around. But that shouldn't be the fact. Abraham had a lot of property. He wasn't a fool. He was a man of God. He listens to God. He has good relationship with God. And he has to do the right thing. So I don't think God will come and help him to be irresponsible. So that part must be straightened up. So it did happen that Hagar has to move from the house. So the woman was thinking about inheritance because she said, move this maid and his son and her son out of the house so that they won't be part of the inheritance to Isaac. Women always think about inheritance in marriage. Excuse me to say that, but that is a fact. So eventually she left, according to the story, and they stayed together. Sarai, Isaac, and Abraham. Sarai had not lived to the time of Abraham. Sarai died at the age of 120 years. At that time, Abraham was 130 years. So when Sarai died, Abraham took a third woman, and her name was Keturah. Some analysts say that Keturah is the real African name for Hagar, but that is a different thing. Let's consider that she's the third woman in Abraham's life. And at that point, if Abraham at 100 is considered to be old, what about 130? 130 years, which one is older? 130 is greater than 100 years. But that is the time God showed his mercy on Abraham, that I will bless you even unto your old age. And it did come true. Abraham has 6 more children with Keturah. So in all, Abraham had 8 children. Now with this, with Abraham, the problem arises. The Christians always preach that. And according to the Christians, and Abraham gave all his things to Isaac, and to the children of his concubines he gave gifts. That is the point of the conflict now. To the children of his concubines. That's what the Christians always preach. Who was a concubine to Abraham? Hagar was not a street girl. She wasn't a prostitute. She wasn't a harlot. She was a real woman that Abraham did marry as a second wife. Later on in the Bible, somewhere they're trying to call Hagar as a slave. Shame on you to say that. At the beginning, you were saying that she was a maid, and now you turn around to call her a slave. Where did Abraham buy that slave? In Egypt? That is a big lie. That was a lie. He gave all his things to Isaac and to the children of his concubines. All right? Now we talk about Hagar. Let's talk about Keturah. Keturah married Abraham when Abraham had no wife. There is no religion on this earth that if someone's partner passes away, the other partner who is living has no right to marry. There's no religion like that. There is no social arrangement like that. If your partner passes away, you have every right to have a partner again. So Abraham did marry Keturah and has 6 children. So are we saying that all these 6 children were illegitimate to Abraham? And his first son an illegitimate to Abraham? Then we have to look into the Bible very well and look at the subsequent marriages. Why are we trying to set a moral standard for Abraham instead of God's standard, man's standard? Monogamy was not the order of the day. Polygamy was the order of the day and well acceptable. And so as a result, Abraham's children were all legitimate. The illegitimacy is now the foundation of the conflict right now between the Jews and the Arabs. So when we look into the Bible, after Isaac and Jacob, nobody writes anything about any children of Abraham. All the story in it is about Israel, Jacob and his children and his descendants. So what about the rest of Abraham's children? We only heard about one of Abraham's descendants when Moses married Zipporah, a Midian, a black woman. That was the only time we heard about one of the children of Abraham, descendants, coming into the Bible. Zipporah. So, from this point, whose sexual gratification with Abraham was considered legitimate. And from the Christian perspective, it was Sarai, because they are setting a standard for Abraham. Sarai. But when we look into Jacob, who will be the legitimate children of Jacob? Tell us about the 12 tribes of Israel, the 12 children, or the 13 tribes of Israel. And now on the part of Abraham, yet they have every right to set a standard for Abraham. That they are setting legitimacy for Abraham. So Abraham's only legitimate child will be Isaac. That is the problem in this world. Abraham had 8 children. He didn't have children of concubines. He had children of real marriage. A well-respected man who did the right thing in the eyes of God. He was a friend of God. He was so unique in perspective. So now they are saying that, all right, looking at the inheritance, all the other children don't even matter. And as a result, this is what we got. That the other children were illegitimate. So only Isaac. And from Isaac's perspective, Isaac has 2 children. Jacob and Esau. And because Jacob linked himself onto Abraham through the maternal side, and Esau linked himself to Abraham from the paternal side, he married the daughter of Ishmael. So he has also been cut off from the salvation plan. So nobody hears anything about anybody again. And as a result, this is the foundation. The sexual gratification and its differential model with Abraham is the foundation of the division between the Arabs and the Jews. So until today, what do we see? The Arabs had monopolized their women, and the Jews have also monopolized their women. So they can't cut across. Intermarriages have become very difficult. And that is a problem. Right now, it has become evidently true that the conflict between the Arabs and the Jews is not from doctrinal differences. That can be straightened up because the Arabs, the Quran, accept the Torah as the greatest revealed book of God. So there's no problem in doctrine. From economic point of view, none of these descendants of Abraham envy anyone in terms of the material acquisition. Not at all. But now the differences that exist today is connected to Abraham and his sexual gratification model. So if sexual gratification is the determining factor for the Jewish and Arab conflict, then the division that has brought will never cease. The division is permanent. The division is completely permanent. The Shiism cannot end. And people keep on dividing them every day and then giving them wrong ideas about each other. But this is the real point. Abraham's sexual gratification. And if it is so, what is the solution? The men had failed by monopolizing their women. Some even will go to the extent of circumcising the women to put the women under control. So Arab man cannot marry a Jewish woman, and a Jewish woman cannot marry an Arab man. Or a Jewish man cannot marry an Arab woman. That division exists. So how would this problem be solved? We got to have a solution for that. And people should begin dialoguing on this issue so that brothers will come together and live in peace. Why can't they live in peace? Just look at the world around. United States is a big nation with over 300 million people, but they are able to live together. Russia, the largest country in the world, they are able to live together. No matter the differences that exist, at least it's one country and they live together. China has the largest population in the world, the third largest country in the world. And still culturally they live together. Brazil, multiculturalism, they live together. Canada, the second largest country in the world, they live together. Even Nigeria has multiple tribes, multiple religions, multiple ideas, and yet still they live together. The most populous nation in Africa, with a population of almost about 200 million people. They live together. So why can't the Jews and the Arabs live together in that small area? It is time for us to dialogue so that people who come from the same source will understand each other and live in peace. And forget about whatever happened in Abraham's time. Abraham's time, his relationship should be considered legitimate. In the eyes of God, he appreciates every human being on earth. No matter where the individual came from, he appreciates his creation. So people of that essence should come together. And as far as the man has failed in terms of the social structuring, we have to let the women do it. How would the women do it? A Jewish woman should be educated to be free woman, to choose from anywhere. Can choose any Arab if she is interested and marry freely. There should be that cordial relationship. If Arab man is interested in a Jewish woman, there should be cordial relationship. And if they can do this, probably they may not need the political giants like America, like European powers to go into their matters. They can solve it themselves. The Jews in Israel might dialogue with their brothers rather than relying on other powers to solve their problem. They are brothers. They should know that. If you are our brothers, brothers should solve their own problem. It shouldn't be anybody's problem. It's their own problem. People contributing to take care of Israel, that's good. But giving them weapons to fight their own brothers, that is not good. Let them dialogue to solve their problem. It is time for the Jews to have peace. As chosen people of God, they shouldn't be suffering all the time. Right now we can say they are at complete peace. Wherever they are, whether in the United States or in Europe or in Russia. I know in Russia during Joseph Stalin time, they have suffered. They need really peace. A peaceful place to settle. Let them dialogue with their brothers rather than telling them, this area is for you, go and take it. This area is for you, go and take it. Let them come together as one people and live in that area. If everybody in America understands America is America for every American, then that area is for them. They shouldn't be thinking about this area belongs to my grandfather, my granddaddy, They should stop it. And find ways and means to dialogue and establish peace among them. They should go back into history to know that they come from the same source. If Abraham was their father, then it should be Abraham and no other person. In that way, they will be able to establish peace for themselves. The Jewish people can dialogue with the Arabs and have a decent relationship as brothers should live. In that way, the problem will be solved. The issue was caused by sexual gratification and its differential model. So with Abraham, if his relationship is accepted as legitimate, tell the Christians to stop unnecessary preaching about Abraham and accept everything of Abraham. If we can accept Jacob, if we can accept David, and we can accept Solomon, or we can accept Absalom, then please go back into history. And in a polygamous society, the father is the figurehead, not the mother. It's not the mother, it's the father. And if the father is the figurehead, then Abraham's children must be considered as legitimate. And all of them should live in that area peacefully. That's all about it. It's not about doctrine differences. It's not about material things of this nature, of that nature. It's because of Abraham's relationship. Stop preaching that to the Jews and the Arabs and tell them they are brothers and sisters and they have to live in peace.